The Napoleonic era, which spread the ideas of liberalism and nationalism beyond the borders of France, cannot be thought of as an exclusively European phenomenon. The collapse of the old regimes of Europe, however temporary, had far-reaching impacts across the world over what historians now dub the Century of Revolutions. In South America, the collapse of the Kingdom of Spain led to the collapse of its colonies. The Viceroyalty de la Plata, covering most of the southern portion of the continent, fell and fractured into various factions and nations. Conflict between the liberal Unitarios and the more conservative Federales caused further division internally within these new states. Over the course of the early 19th century, a prominent landowner or caudillo named Juan Manuel de Rosas assumed power with widespread support in the Argentine Confederation, the strongest of the former regions of De la Plata. Although nominally a federale, supporting the limited localized government of the caudillos, de Rosas was setting about creating a more centralized government from his seat in Buenos Aires, enjoying uncontested power and the loyalty of the Confederation's military. Many saw in de Rosas the restoration of the lost territories of De la Plata, which had either collapsed into the new neighboring states of Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay, or fell into the hands of foreign powers like the United Kingdom. Yet such conflict could attract the unwanted attention of Brazil, the Confederation's main rival in the Platine region. If he was to become El Restaurador, de Rosas required caution and an eye for the opportunity to strike. The immediate crisis facing the Confederation was finances. The disorderly and irregular payments arranged between the Confederation members made supporting the government and its military a challenge. Thus, although a federale, de Rosas had invited certain liberal thinkers within his cabinet, bringing with them their free trade ideas on the classical theories, such as those of John Locke and Adam Smith. They advocated for higher taxes on the citizenry, but stressed the need for lower tariffs, thereby allowing wealth to flow into the country, thereby increasing the Confederation's tax base. De Rosas was loath to implement such policies, seeing as how they might damage relations with the caudillos, his political allies. Nonetheless, the preservation and stability of the Confederation took top priority. Nonetheless, these liberal thinkers were helping boost Argentine prestige as a power in South America, starting an economics conference on the benefits of free trade in Buenos Aires. Initially, an economics conference in what Europe considered to be an anarchic rogue state failed to generate interest. However, the announcement that David Ricardo, an English émigré and prominent economist, would be heading the conference, garnered de Rosas the international attention that he craved. He understood the importance of being able to project himself as a strong and sophisticated leader in a region of the world where instability was the norm. One would only have to look at Central America, where political, ethnic, and regional differences were leading to the collapse of the FRCA, to see the dangers of weak leadership. In August, a battered diplomat from the neighboring nation of Uruguay, a country friendly to the Confederation, approached de Rosas with an offer of an alliance. A rather one-sided alliance, as the Confederation was the major military power south of the Rio, whereas Uruguay had slipped into a civil war as the liberal Colorados were poised to overthrow the more conservative Blanco government. Nonetheless, sensing not only a potential ally, but also an opportunity to expand the Confederation's influence in the region, de Rosas not only accepted, but negotiated military access to allow the Argentine military to enter and defeat the rebellious Colorados. Another controversial decision, as it led to further financial strain, but, as of now, de Rosas' authority was unquestioned. Argentine forces, under fellow caudillo Angel Pacheco, one of the posh, implacable members of the former Spanish aristocracy, managed to handily defeat the smaller, disorganized forces of the Colorados with ease. Likening the battle more to a slaughter of pigs, Pacheco turned his attention to besieging the final rebel holdouts in the north of Uruguay. All the while, Argentine soldiers looked on with disdain across the border at the Brazilian troops handling a revolt of their own in Grande Sul. Some in the army began whispering aloud about the possibility of intervention in this affair, whispers that made their way to Buenos Aires itself, whereas many politicians, Unitario and Federal alike, would have preferred a quick end to the Uruguayan conflict and the rebalancing of the national budget. One Lorenzo Pellegrini, a firebrand reactionary with a noticeable nationalist slant, argued aloud in the cabinet in favor of intervention on the side of Grande Sul. These arguments had made their way to the front pages of Argentinian newspapers, and some Brazilian ones. De Rosas was tempted. After all, it had been to expand Argentine influence that they had gotten involved in Uruguay to begin with, so why not go further? The answer lay in the fact that the military was proving to be a hard strain on finances, making war with Brazil impossible for the time being. After all, De Rosas had already set his eyes on smaller, low-hanging fruit in the form of the lost territories of Jujuy. Jujuy, on the northern frontier, had been a point of contention between the Argentine Confederation and the newly formed Peru-Bolivian Confederation, a powerful new state that threatened the balance of power within the region. However, to obtain the necessary military leverage needed to counteract this new power, Argentina needed allies. Strong allies rather than small states that were unable to support themselves. The natural ally was Chile, located along the Pacific coast of the continent, which had been eyeing Bolivia's ports at Antofagasta for quite some time. However, a fierce rivalry between De Rosas and the Chilean statesman Diego Portales made such a union challenging and unpopular. Nonetheless, more level-headed, cooler statesmen like Pacheco were able to flatter and schmooze their way into the other's respective capitals and keep relations and common interests warm. As relations became more amicable between these uneasy nations, De Rosas began moving his forces along the Jujuy border in the next stage of his Reconquista de la Plata.